we can create happiness for ourselves. That we create happiness for ourselves and we ourselves create unhappiness for ourselves. And these values are the means of creating happiness for ourselves. Because what is happiness after all? When do I feel happy? When I am satisfied with myself. I have expectations of my own self, and whenever I am able to meet with those expectations, I approve of myself. What is needed is self-approval. And when do I approve of myself? When I am able to live up to my own expectations of myself. So what do I expect from myself? I expect from myself that I should be a loving person, a kind person, a compassionate person. Swami, I have never expected that. But yes, we do. Because this love, these values of love or kindness or compassion are in keeping with my own nature, meaning that Atma, the self, is compassionate by nature. Is kind, compassionate, loving by nature. And therefore, whenever I find myself a compassionate person, then I am in harmony with myself. There is inner harmony, there is inner expectation, inner satisfaction, and therefore happiness. So happiness is the result of my being comfortable with myself, my being satisfied with myself, and that can be only when I am able to live up to my own expectation of myself. So compassion happens to be our nature, by the way. The self that we talked about, namely consciousness, or Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Satchidananda self, when that self manifests in life, it manifests as happiness, as love, as compassion. And therefore, a life lived in keeping with those values is conducive to discovering the true nature of myself, because that's closest to myself. And therefore, yesterday in the Satsang we talked about non-violence. Lord Krishna also teaches non-violence. Yoga Shastra also teaches non-violence. And all of the traditions, Jain, they all teach non-violence, ahimsa. Which requires that I should not violate, I should not hurt anybody by my physical action, by my oral action, by my mental action. This is possible only when I have compassion. This not hurting somebody is not just a static value. Ahimsa or non-violence is not just not doing something. Only it sounds like not violating is called non-violence, which is true. But when will I not violate? Only when I am compassionate. That is when I do not violate. Otherwise, we always violate. Even by the very disposition of mind. When I do not like a person, I don't approve of a person, not happy with a person, or I divide my party and your party, my cricket team, I root for this, and automatically division is there. That shows that I am not compassionate towards those which I consider as different from myself. And that time I am violating, understand? So it may not be a very overt action, but in a subtle way. Whenever we are deviated from our true nature, we are violating. And therefore, only Sthita Prajna, who abides in his nature, is totally a non-violent person. And we, in one measure or the other, keep violating if we are not alert. Therefore, this C for compassion should become a very important thing. C. C for controlling myself, controlling my anger and my impulses. C for positively being compassionate. And C for being charitable. How can I be compassionate? By being charitable to others. Compassion calls for accepting others as they are, with all their limitations, shortcomings, blemishes as they are. In my mind there is no revolt, no rejection, no resistance. When there is an acceptance of that person, that is when I am truly compassionate. But when we think of people whom we don't like or do not fit our bill, who are not able to live up to our expectations, whatever they are, there is a certain rejection in our mind. So compassion automatically calls for embracing what is. And so it is a very important value because it is in keeping with the nature of the self. As our Puja Swami used to say, to know the self, that is love by nature, we must be relatively a loving person. To know the self, that is happiness by nature, we should be a relatively happy person. Similarly, being compassionate is a requirement to know the self. Even what we talked about last night, nirmana moha jitasanga dosha, free from pride, free from infatuation. All of these are other names of compassion really. Or other names of non-violence. So, even when you say ahimsa, non-violence, kshanti, forgiveness, that's also a pair. Ahimsa and kshama or kshanti. They make one pair of values. And that is equal to compassion. So compassion is a very important value. If it does not arise, compassion requires empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel somebody's pain, to be sensitive to somebody's pain, somebody's problem. That's called empathy, and that brings the word sympathy. But suppose I don't have much empathy, then I can fake it till I make it. Meaning that even though the outward behavior of a person may be not acceptable to me, may be what I consider as improper. In a two-step response, one step response would be to react to that behavior of the person. The two-step response would be to see the person behind the behavior. That even in the outwardly aggressive behavior, unpleasant behavior, unacceptable behavior, there is a person who is in pain because this behavior comes from an inner pain. So I deliberately make my mind see the person in pain and try to respond to that person rather than the behavior of that person. So, thus we can practice compassion. This brings about what we call accommodation, forgiveness, see for charity, large-heartedness, accepting the limitations, shortcomings, the defects of other people. Because everybody is a combination of virtue and vice. Unless we work hard to get rid of our vices, they are there in one measure or the other. There is no perfect person except a sthita prajna. We will always find in other person aspects that are not acceptable to us. They do not meet with our expectations or requirements. And therefore, a sense of inner rejection, if not rejection, a certain amount of aversion will take place. And so our world is divided into likes and dislikes, and there are many whom we have aversion for in various measures. We may not dislike everybody in the same measure, dislike little more, little less. But that dislike or aversion is a manifestation of violence. And that aversion is there because there is an attachment somewhere which also becomes therefore an expression of violence. So inner violence manifests as attachments and aversions. Attachment is because somebody satisfies my expectations. Aversion is because somebody does not satisfy my expectations. This expectation itself is violence, understand? And expectation means that I am not accepting the thing as it is, I expect it to be different from what it is. We can see the subtle violence which is built into ourselves. So, being alert and being non-violent, being compassionate requires to drop even expectations also. We are a compassionate person, we are a non-violent person when we accept a person as the person is. With no resistance in there, there is no dislike there, there is no complaint there. That's the value of non-violence or compassion. A very important value. Amuraha, last night we said that, undeluded. Now deluded we are born because of ignorance. Now it becomes our effort to go undeluded. Therefore Lord Krishna prescribes certain values. Nirmana moha. Those are free from mana, pride, moha, infatuation. So pride is a product of, is a delusion, is a product of ignorance. Infatuation, product of ignorance. Intolerance, product of ignorance. So by deliberately following those values, we have to undelude ourselves, undo things that we have inadvertently done. And that is called spiritual life. What is spiritual life is, the first step is deliberately bringing about inner purification. In the words of Pujya Swamiji, emotional maturity or inner purification. To make the mind sattvic is a great effort. That is spiritual life. The second phase is then, of course, gaining the knowledge with that mind. So as Lord Krishna says, Lokesmin dvidhanistha praprokta mayanagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. The spiritual life has two phases. First is of karma yoga, meaning a life lived for inner purification, and second is jnana yoga, a life of contemplation upon the self. So compare, not so-called spiritual life. I don't know why so-called spiritual life. But anyway, an intelligent person only lives a spiritual life. Because that's the only way to make ourselves happy. Inner purification is the way to make ourselves happy. And there is no other way of becoming happy. No other way. No, Swamiji, I know how to be happy. I always get the things that I want and I'm happy. I enjoy riding my car, I'm happy, I enjoy. Understand that those happiness, experience of happiness, is not because of riding the car or because of some kind of a pleasant thing. It is merely fructification of the past punya karma. I should have said this last night, in fact. That happiness, punya karma brings about sukham, papa karma brings about dukkham. This is the rule of law of karma. So any moment I experience happiness, a car may become instrumental, something may become instrumental, a situation may become instrumental in creating a given frame of mind, but the cause of my experience of happiness is past punya karma. And the cause of our unhappiness is our past papa karma. That papa karma may inspire somebody to behave in a certain way which is insulting to me and I feel unhappy, but that's papa karma working through things. And punya karma may inspire somebody to flatter me and praise me and then make me happy. My punya karma inspired that way. But all happiness is a result of punya karma or virtuous action. Alone unhappiness is a result of papa karma. No object and nobody gives us happiness. Therefore, to be happy, the best thing, right thing to do is to do punya karma, meaning virtuous actions. What is a virtuous action? Be a contributor. Every act of contribution becomes a punya karma and creates happiness. And being compassionate is punya karma. Being kind is punya karma. Being loving is punya karma. What is punya karma? A karma or an action that is performed in harmony with the law, which is the nature of self. So every time you are a kind person, a compassionate person, you are only helping yourself by creating happiness for yourself. There is no spiritual life without compassion or non-violence. No spiritual life without values. What is spiritual? So-called spiritual life. Spiritual life calls, Lord Krishna teaches the right values and attitudes. As the karma yoga, yoga is nothing but the values, the right attitudes. There are 4 types of yoga: Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga and Kriya yoga, or what Swami Vivekananda called Raja yoga or Patanjali yoga. 4 types of yoga. Shastra says jnanam eva moksha means jnanadeva tu kaivalyam. That's the Shastra says that kaivalyam or moksha can be only by knowledge. So can't we attain moksha, freedom from by other yogas? By bhakti can we not attain moksha? By karma can we not attain moksha? By Patanjali yoga can we not attain moksha? We attain moksha because each of the other three yogas ultimately create the situation for jnanam. So bhakti also creates a disposition of mind which is fit for knowledge. So does karma yoga does, which is also another name of bhakti, or Patanjali yoga. All of them are required in one measure or the other. That's called karma yoga. So all of these bhakti or yoga or karma, all of them really fall in the category of the karma yoga, the first stage of our self-growth or spiritual life, which brings us the purification of mind, which creates in us the desire for knowledge, which creates in us the shraddha and bhakti, So all those yogas lead to knowledge. Whether they can be directly means of knowledge or not is a matter of debate. We say that knowledge alone can give rise to moksha because moksha is attainment of what is already attained, meaning that you are already free or liberated by nature. And what separates you from moksha or freedom is ignorance. And therefore, we have to remove that inhibiting factor which is ignorance. And ignorance is like darkness, and just as darkness can be dispelled only by knowledge, similarly also ignorance can only be dispelled by knowledge. Darkness is dispelled by light, so also ignorance can be dispelled by knowledge. In that sense, we say that knowledge is the only means of moksha, because moksha is an existing fact, is to be discovered and not to be achieved. Karma is the means of achieving what is not achieved, where jnanam is the means of achieving what is already achieved and thought to be not achieved. So therefore the Vedantins always give the example of 10th man, where the 10th man attained liberation by knowing that I am the 10th man. That does not mean that bhakti or yoga or karma has no place. It is very important to prepare our mind for recognizing that I am liberated, I am already free. So these enable us to experience that freedom. So yoga and bhakti, they create an experience, and by knowledge we recognize that that experience is myself. To see myself as a free person, there should be an experience of freedom, which is what this thing brings about, sattvic mind. And so you recognize it, just freedom is my nature. And so, all of these yogas that are prescribed, all of them have an important position. The reason why there is bhakti yoga, karma yoga, Patanjali yoga is because each one of them will suit a person with a particular kind of disposition. Some people are just disposed for devotion, some people are disposed for activity or seva, some are disposed for yoga. That is the disposition, which perhaps we have brought from our past. So there is no one prescription for everybody. Therefore we have so many prescriptions in our tradition. And depending on what, that's why so many devatas are there. depending upon what suits you, your disposition, your emotional makeup. And therefore there are many paths, as Puja Swami would say, for Antahkarana Shuddhi or purification of mind, which brings you pretty close to Ishvara or to yourself. Like in a transistor, there used to be those two knobs. A big knob which brought the indicator to essentially to the station that you wanted to listen to. And you get the music, yeah, this is Vivida Bharati, this is my song that I want to listen to. And then you fine tune. So Jnanam can do fine tuning, but then already the karma bhakti has created the ground for me to discover. And therefore Vedanta accepts all of them. In case my answer needs further clarification, you raise your hand. Now here is lots of questions. Okay, I have following questions. Is Pratyagatma and Kutas the same? Two Sanskrit words, Pratyagatma and Kutastha. The words are different, and the what we call Vachyartha or the literal meaning also is different, but they amount to the same thing. Meaning that both of them describe the self. Pratyagatma is the indwelling self. Pratilomena anchati iti pratyak, they say that which is totally contradictory to this world, which is mithya. Opposite to that is satyam, world is dukkham, that opposite is happiness. So the Pratyagatma is that indwelling self, innermost self. And Kutastha means changeless. Kutavat tishtati. But Kuta has more than one meanings. One meaning what Kuta is an anvil upon which a goldsmith, for example, uses the anvil to make his ornaments. So different pieces come, they are formed on anvil and go. So whereas ornaments come and go and they keep on changing, the anvil remains unchanged. So that which is a changeless base of all the changes is called Kutastha, which also happens to be Atma. Or Kuta also means mountain or hillock, meaning something that does not, unshakable. Kutavattishtati, that remains changeless, unshakable. That also ultimately happens to be Atma. So words are different and literal meanings are different, but these are both the words that are used for Atma. Turiya and Kutastha are the same, they will amount to the same. Turiya means fourth. Chaturiya, in which the cha is dilated, thus will become Turiya. Turiya is actually Chaturiya. Chatu means four. Chaturiya means fourth. So Turiya also means fourth. So Atma is called fourth. Maya Sankhya Turiyam. As Shankaracharya says that Atma is called fourth, Maya Sankhya, because of the count by Maya. If you count waker as one, dreamer as second, and the sleeper as the third, then Atma is as though the fourth. So Turiya means fourth, Atma is as though the fourth. Although he is only one actually. But he alone is a waker, he alone is dreamer, he alone is sleeper. Like one actor who is also king and the beggar and a minister, who pervades them all and transcends them. Similarly, so Turiya and Atma are also one in Kutastha. How does one keep Jivatva Bhavana? When needed, and subdue it with aham when needed. How to keep jivatva bhavana when needed and subdue that when needed. I think the question seems to be, because for carrying out our day-to-day activities, you have to be so and so like jiva. And then at your will you want to subdue that jiva. You see, a wise person appears to be jiva also because the wise person also carries out the daily activities. But he is like an actor who has a clear knowledge of the distance between the role and the actor. So actor acts like a beggar, that's a jiva. But knowing fully well that of his true identity, which is actor. So it is not that you have to keep up jivatva bhavana. Jivatva is product of ignorance, meaning actor doesn't have to maintain the bhavana that I am a beggar. He has to maintain the bhavana that I am actor, then act as a beggar, you follow? Similarly, bhavana that we should be maintaining is that I am Satchidananda, acting as a person, as a so and so. That as Pratyagatma, I am playing variety of roles, and a role always has some needs and expectations which I try to fulfill. If you want to call that jivatva bhavana, I do not know, but anyway. So while performing what duty is, performing various roles, how to try to maintain the awareness of a true identity, that's the great secret. It's not subduing something, it is negating something. Meaning that when the actor has the awareness that I am actor, then he is negating the beggar. Meaning that he recognizes that beggar is mithya. So distance between satya and mithya. The jiva is mithya. The ego performing vyavahara is mithya. But since you have to live your life and perform vyavahara, therefore you gladly perform your roles. One who performs a role is an actor. He acts as though he is a beggar. As beggar is mithya, as actor is satyam. Is there a direct way to feel aham vritti? If so, what is it? How does one remove an obstacle in keeping that bhavana continuously? That's exactly what Vedanta teaches. The Vedantic method of knowing the self is what we call the neti neti. By negating or recognizing what is non-self as non-self. Recognizing non-self as a non-self. We don't have to become self. We don't have to know a self that is unknown to us. We already know ourselves, but then in that knowledge of self also is mixed up non-self. So when I say that I am so and so, that so and so part belongs to non-self, I am part belongs to the self. So recognize a non-self as a non-self and thus give up the identification with that is a way of remaining as a self. That's what Vedanta teaches. You can read that book called Druk Drishya Viveka, which teaches how to create a distance between the self. Druk means the drashta, the witness. Drishya is the object or witness. The subject-object viveka or subject-object discrimination is what the text teaches us. That would be helpful. What are the stages to follow in life? Dharma, duty, nishkama karma, giving up to worship, surrender, sharanagati of Ishvara. Please explain how to practice, how to practically practice them. I think that's what it looks like. Bhagavad Gita describes two stages. Jnana yogena sankhyanam, karma yogena yoginam. The first stage Lord Krishna says is karma yoga. Second stage is jnana yoga. What is karma yoga? Karma yoga is performing karma or duty. In the word karma yoga, the word karma means duty. And yoga means attitude. What is the attitude? Attitude of offering to Ishvara. You can call it nishkama karma also, a selfless action. But ideally, even a selfless action also, if it is performed with an attitude of offering to Ishvara, that would be ideal karma yoga. So first stage is performing the duty. That's called dharma. In the spirit of sharanagati, I am surrendered to the Lord. How do I perform the karma? As a bhakta of the Lord. Meaning that in practical life we should become bhakta of the devotees. A devotee is automatically surrendered to the Lord. What is meant by surrender to the Lord? He is accepting the outcome of our action as the Lord gives as prasada. So practical surrender is to accept the outcome of our action as the prasada or grace of the Lord. You know what do we need to surrender at that time? We need to surrender all our resistance. We resist things that we do not like, or we reject what we do not like. Prasada buddhi, accepting it as prasada, requires graceful acceptance of what is, whether favorable or unfavorable, success or failure. There, I surrender my resistance. I surrender my tendency to reject what I do not like, my tendency to resist what I do not like. I have to surrender in order to accept the situation as the prasada or grace of Ishvara. So Sharanagati surrender also is there, bhakti also is there, karma yoga, so there is one package, ideal package. Then second stage is, as we said, jnana yoga, when there is a keen desire, asanga shastrena drudena chitva. This creates in me asangata or vairagya. Meaning that I become free from all my fascination, infatuations, attachments, aversions. That is called sattvic mind or the purity of the mind. In that mind, automatically a desire for knowledge arises. This is called vividisha. Therefore, karma yoga, meaning performing actions or duties as a devotee of the Lord. So a karma yogi is necessarily a devotee of the Lord. Meaning that we have to invoke from ourselves a devotee. Then ideally that karma becomes yoga. And that leads to purification of mind. As the mind becomes sattvic, automatically the nature of desires in our mind is determined by the disposition of mind. When the mind has predominance of rajas, There will be desires for, there will be greed, actions one after the other, restlessness, achieving a value for worldly things, and value for self-gratification, sense gratification, ego gratification. All this happens when there is rajas. As the mind becomes sattvic, all this change. And slowly I discover, I lose, that fascination, false fascination that I had for things, when I discover better things. See, real vairagya comes, or real dispassion comes only when we discover something superior. So as the mind becomes sattvic, we come in greater and greater contact with ourselves, and that self happens to be happiness. Therefore, we discover progressively greater and greater happiness within ourselves. When we become more and more happy with ourselves, satisfied with ourselves, the need for the searching for happiness naturally goes down. The craving automatically goes down. Automatically attachment, everything go down. My dependence goes down. I become progressively more and more free. It's not that someday moksha comes. Moksha comes, every step moksha comes, freedom comes. And thus the love for knowledge keeps on arising at mind. A time comes when I just cannot do without knowledge. Then you are ready to retire, sannyasa. Tatah padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuya. Lord Krishna says, then you go to the teacher. And tameva chadyam purusham prapadye tat padam parim. Then you search for that padam, that abode, that goal, that truth, knowing which nothing remains to be known. So primarily two stages. But one leads to the other. They are not two distinct stages. Now Swamiji have decided to now become a jnana yogi. You keep becoming. It is not that you have to postpone even listening to Vedanta for a time when you keep doing that also. But that listening to Vedanta will become more and more effective as we become, our mind becomes more and more sattvic, leading ultimately to knowledge and moksha. Is that clear? Yes.
Is the desire to have moksha, is that in a conflict with vairagya, or is that totally on the path? The desire to achieve moksha.
Yes, that's a good question. How about desire for moksha? Vairagya means freedom from all desires. Does it mean also that there is no desire for moksha also? Meaning that desire for moksha, is it compatible to vairagya? Yes, it is. That is called vairagya. Vairagya is freedom from the worldly desires. Because desire for moksha is the only desire that can be really fulfilled. Other desires appear to be fulfilled, but they do not really get fulfilled because one desire gives its place to another desire. But desire for moksha gets fulfilled because moksha happens to be my nature. So Lord Krishna says, gaining which nothing remains to be gained, going when there is no return, etc. When I am in deep sleep, I am completely ignorant. My mind is not manifest. Meaning the mind becomes merged in ignorance. That's what happens in deep sleep. The process of sleep is slowly and slowly the faculty is merging. First the gross body, then the subtle body, and the mind also merges into ignorance. And therefore, there is no knowledge of the self. I do not know myself, nor do I know anything other than myself. However, when I wake up, I can recall that I slept well. So I'm aware of my deep sleep in a way. So when you wake up, and that's what Vedanta says, that there is happiness in the sleep. And for that, the evidence that is presented is that a person who had a good sleep, when he wakes up, he says, I slept well. Now that is said to be the statement of memory, that he remembers. Meaning that he did experience happiness in the sleep, which he remembers when he wakes up, and then he says, I slept well. So the statement, I slept well, is from memory, which presupposes experience. And so it looks like that the mind, in a way, has some awareness of experience of deep sleep, happiness in deep sleep. Otherwise, how can it recall in the morning, when he wakes up? So, a text called Vedanta Sara explains, this is one way of explaining, that it is true that the manifest mind is merged into ignorance, but there are subtle vrittis of ignorance through which there is an experience of happiness. So self experiences happiness in deep sleep, not through the vrittis of the mind, but through the vrittis of ignorance, which is the cause of mind. That very same ignorance then manifests as mind, that is why he recalls his experience in deep sleep. So that's the explanation that is given. When I am awake, my mind is manifest and it colors my true self. The mind needs to be purified so I can see my true self. Can the mind be so purified as not to color the true self at all? And can we experience the true self in complete clarity? The answer is yes. That ignorance can be completely dispelled. When you say my mind colors the self, what it means is that the mind, there is a process called adhyasa, a superimposition. That mind habitually superimposes the attributes of this body-mind-sense complex upon the self and feels a sense of limitation. As the mind becomes sattvic, automatically this gets slowly and slowly subdued, meaning that even the superimposition itself will become subtler and subtler. Because more the rajas is, more the superimposition is. So tamas is avaranam, rajas is vikshepa. As sattva guna comes, the influence of avarana viksheva keeps on reducing, and therefore even the adhyasa superimposition also progressively diminishes. And then it is eliminated completely because it is product of ignorance. Because this coloring or adhyasa is product of ignorance, yes, ignorance goes in the light of the knowledge, and so yes, you can completely recognize yourself as happiness. Can Brahman be realized by Viveka or knowledge alone, or can Brahman be realized through bhakti or experience alone? Understand that knowledge presupposes an experience. What is knowledge? Knowledge is knowledge of what is. Right now, I cognize with my organs of perception. What can I cognize? What is what I cognize. So knowledge is there only when there is experience, otherwise it can't be knowledge. When I talk about something that is not a matter of my experience, then it's not called knowledge, because then it's only something indirect. So experience and knowledge are not different really. Because self happens to be self-effulgent, therefore experience is always there. We do not have to create an experience of self, because I always experience myself, because I or the self is self-effulgent. Every experience takes place only after the experience of the self. So now the thing is, what is the nature of what I am experiencing? This is what Vedanta teaches us. Self I am already experiencing. What is the nature of what I am experiencing? Then Vedanta teaches us that in what I am experiencing, these two elements are involved, self and non-self. See, both are experienced together. Self being self-effulgent is always experienced, you can't avoid it. And non-self, namely body, is also illuminated by the self, therefore that is also experience. Except that body, mind, sense complexes experiences object or non-self, and the Atma is experienced as a self. Thus there are two different locuses, self, Atma is experienced as subject, and the body, mind, sense complex is experienced as the object. But not being able to distinguish between them, that's called coloring, lumping together. And therefore, this lump of Atma and Anatma is what I call self today. So Vedanta teaches us to recognize what is the non-self part. In what I am calling self today, what is the non-self part? That you are tall, you are short, you are happy, you are unhappy. Understand that that's a non-self part. Don't identify with that. So that's called Viveka. Viveka means what? Discrimination. Separating self from the non-self. And that is how experience becomes clearer and clearer, because as a non-self we recognize as non-self, the Atma becomes clearer and clearer until I recognize that all I am is consciousness. So as far as Atma is concerned, experience is not to be created. When it comes to something different from myself, an experience needs to be created. As far as the self is concerned, experience is always there, because self is self-effulgent or self-revealing. Therefore it is to be, so we have to understand what we are experiencing. Vedanta helps us understand what we are already experiencing. We are already experiencing ourselves, we are experiencing the world, we are experiencing God. All of these are already being experienced. Except that I misinterpret them. It is not lack of experience that is a problem in my life, it is a wrong interpretation of the experience that's our problem. I is not the problem, but the wrong interpretation of what I am is a problem. And Vedanta helps us to rightly interpret my experience. So Vedanta talks about what is, meaning what is experienced. But in our experience, since these two elements are mixed up, therefore Viveka or discrimination or separation is required. So it's called Viveka Jnanam, discriminative knowledge. I hope that is clear. This business of experience and knowledge always goes on forever. But self doesn't have to be experienced because it is always experienced. And knowledge can only be of what you are experiencing, otherwise it is not knowledge, it is something indirect knowledge. If I am not experiencing fire and I infer the presence of fire from the smoke, then it is not experience of fire, it is indirect knowledge of fire. Atma happens to be direct and immediate, therefore we don't have to create any experience of Atma. Every attempt of creating experience is denying that experience really. What sadhana needs to be done to attain the qualities described by Bhagavan in the shloka 15.5, which we discussed last night? Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivruttaka. What sadhana is required? First, there are two stages here, or two aspects here. One is clarity of understanding, and other is putting that into practice. This is where practice is required. Lord Krishna says, becoming free from pride and infatuation. So we should understand what pride is and what infatuation is, number one. And secondly, what is that pride in me? In me, what is it that can be called pride? And in me, what is it that is infatuation? I must recognize that pride and infatuation in me. So they should become evident to me that, oh, this is pride. Oh, when I do this, this is called pride. When I do this, it's called infatuation. I should see that. So understanding what pride is and recognizing that pride when it occurs in me, then also a value for becoming free from pride, recognizing that pride is a manifestation of bondage and freedom from pride is the means of becoming free from bondage. Value. Then being alert that when the pride arises, then I must be ready to neutralize that pride. An understanding of how to remove that pride, we say that just as acid is neutralized by alkali, similarly also by pratipaksha bhavana, we neutralize this negative tendency. So pride is neutralized by the attitude of humility, which we discussed last night. So sadhana is pratipaksha bhavana. Deliberately creating a counter value or a counter disposition. If pride is one disposition, I should deliberately create counter disposition. This humility is counter to the pride. Where humility is, pride is not. So I deliberately bring in humility, that's how the pride goes. And you have to do this again and again and again. By simply doing once, the pride will not go, it will come back again. It will come back again and come back again. And thus we should be constantly, alertly practicing humility to become free from this pride which has become habit. So there's all these values that Lord Krishna teaches in the verse required to be practiced alertly by understanding what they are and what's the means of neutralizing them. So what should I bring up in my mind as the counter disposition to neutralize that disposition? How to avoid getting into victim mentality by accepting everything coming our way without resistance. So this we keep on teaching, graceful acceptance, graceful acceptance. This can be misinterpreted as helpless acceptance. Graceful acceptance is not helpless acceptance. I am a victim when I helplessly accept something because I am not able to resist. I am not able to fight against it And therefore, out of helplessness, I accept a situation, put up with the situation. That is a victim. That is not healthy. We don't really accept the situation in that way. Even though the word accept is used, there is a graceful acceptance. Normally, acceptance means not reacting to something and therefore keeping it in our mind. Not reacting is called acceptance. So even if I am hurt, I keep that hurt within myself and I do not react. That is called acceptance. But there is not graceful acceptance. When that acceptance causes a sense of hurt in me or reaction in me, it is not graceful acceptance. Graceful acceptance is when acceptance does not create any reaction, such as hurt. How? By, just we said, by compassion, by forgiveness, by understanding that this is how things are. They don't know what they are doing, they are all ignorance, that's what is doing this, and therefore I know where it is coming from. So when we realize that even the hurtful behavior we know where it is coming from. The hurtful behavior comes from the superficial mind of that person, but it comes from his own hurt. So when we make our mind see the person behind the behavior, then a real sympathy arises. That is when we have graceful acceptance. Otherwise it is a hurtful acceptance. So victim is the person who accepts it helplessly. No. Gracefully accept. Graceful means with understanding I do, with sympathy I do. Because I sympathize with the person behind the behavior. A two-step response. So yes, understand that acceptance does not mean helpless acceptance. Sahanam saradukhanam apratikara purvakam chinta vilaparahitam. This is very described Viveka Chudamani, is a very strict description, difficult for anybody. I mean, there is no 100% graceful acceptance, I must admit. There is no 100% freedom from pride, etc. It's tough. We can do the best that we can do. And so, recognizing that, hurt only creates pain in me, and therefore accepting is better to react rather than simply helplessly accepting something and then suffering within ourselves. Is better to express ourselves that this hurts me. We don't have to hurt the other person. But if we find the other person's behavior as hurtful to us, we certainly have the freedom to express ourselves politely that this hurts me. What happens when we get hurt, we get excited and then we react. But when we get hurt, we have to draw boundaries and let the other person know that there are boundaries that the person has to maintain, and that I also deserve a certain amount of respect. This has to be expressed. Maybe not right then. When the situation is hot, better to keep quiet. When situation cools down, when that person is now amenable to communication, at that time, in polite and clear terms, I can say that when I am treated in this manner, I feel hurt. Don't say you are hurting me. That's a judgment that nobody will accept. But when I am treated in this way, I feel hurt. This is different from saying that you are hurting me. When I say I feel hurt, I give leeway to that person, I give freedom to the person to say, I did not mean to hurt you. You follow? Hopefully that will be the response. Because now the person is in right mind. And when a person realizes that he or she has hurt somebody, then they will certainly want to, seek forgiveness. I did not mean that. If you say you hurt me, I did not. Then there is defense. The person becomes defensive. And therefore, a proper communication, when there is an atmosphere of that communication, we should take the opportunity to communicate our feelings. So people know. Sometimes they may not even know that their behavior hurts us. Sometimes people may not know. Because if somebody treats that person that way, they don't feel hurt, And sometimes you just give a punch like that. It doesn't feel. But to me, I feel hurt. Wait a minute, I feel hurt. He said, I don't feel hurt when somebody does that to me. You may not. When you are treated in that way, you are not hurt. But when I am treated that way, I feel hurt. So then the person should know. Sometimes they don't know that their behavior is hurtful. So communication is important, expressing our feelings are important. Simply keeping this hurt piled up in our mind is not healthy at all. Yeah, it is 1:15. In chapter 15 of Gita, what Krishna said to Arjuna is tasmad, I'm telling, this person doesn't say what Krishna, but he says, therefore, hey Arjuna, you arise and perform your duty. It looks like Lord Krishna says, Arjuna, arise and fight. But what is meant by fight is perform your duty, meaning that respond to the situation as it is proper for you to respond. That's called swadharma. Meaning Lord Krishna asks Arjuna to follow swadharma. What is the right thing to do? If Mahavira had been in that place of Krishna, what would he have said? That's what Mahatma Gandhi also said. Apparently, Gandhiji did not approve of Lord Krishna's telling Arjuna to fight. He says, Lord Krishna should have taught Arjuna to transform the mind of Duryodhana so that fight is not necessary. That sounds very good theoretically, but I think Lord Krishna is much more practical than that. Recognize what is incorrigible. People like Duryodhana, incorrigible. You just cannot convert them. For converting them, you have to be so great that you are not. Meaning that we cannot expect that we can convert and change other people, because we have to be much more than what we are to impact other person. And there was nobody who could, even Lord Krishna could not change Arjuna. Maybe Mahavira may have changed it, possible. But Lord Krishna tried to change Duryodhana, to avert this war. When there was no way out, then only this battle was accepted. Understand? It's not that Lord Krishna likes battle, but then also paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya dushkrutam, that the sadhus need to be protected and the evil forces need to be destroyed, because there is no way to change the evil forces and transform them. You can as much as you can, but sometimes the point comes when that is not possible. Then you have to get rid of something. If you're diabetes and you're hurt in your foot, and then you try to heal that wound as much as you can, when you find you cannot, you have to amputate that leg ultimately to protect the rest of the body. So similarly, sometimes it becomes necessary to remove something to protect the rest of it. And that's exactly what. So in fact, there is non-violence. If you don't amputate that leg because you can't amputate violence, then you'll destroy the whole body. That would be violence. So violence and non-violence are not determined by the form, they are determined by the spirit of the action. And so Lord is not teaching violence, He is teaching non-violence to protect dharma, which only will protect the society. So here we have to conclude our session of question and answers. I know there are a few more, but we'll conclude here with a prayer. Om Purnamada पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ